All right, so lecture 3, let's go ahead and see what we're going to talk about. We're going to discuss some tolerancing. We're going to discuss how to make some leaders. And we're going to also take a look at how to create tables. So the first thing is tolerancing. The reason why tolerancing is so important, the easiest way of doing it is just to always remember that in a perfect world, everything would be created perfectly. But in a fab shop, depending on what you're creating, there's different kind of bend radiuses and the saw blade thickness and things of that nature that does interfere with those perfect measurements. So a tolerance gives people a chance to have a little variance in it, not to really have a hard sell on it so they don't make a mistake. There are 4 types of tolerancing in AutoCAD. The first 2, you're going to have a symmetrical, which means that it's going to be plus or minus that one number. So you can go above it or beyond it. You can have a deviation, which means that you can have a number different from the other one. So it can be higher at a certain tolerance and lower at a certain one. And the way you read this is that if I have a tolerance set at 5.25, this variance gives me that this distance can be 5.15 or all the way up to 5.35. So that's that's the symmetrical one. And if I'm using a deviation, you can see that this tells me that the maximum length that this can be is 5.30, or the lowest that it can be is 5.15. So that's kind of more or less what these tolerancing are giving you. Underneath the limits, it's working the exact same as the deviation, except for the numbers are not in a plus or minus format. They're just giving you a hard number. So the tallest or biggest that this number can be is 5.30, and I'm reading this one. And the limit, and the lowest that it can be is going to be a 5.13. Then also you have a basic dimensioning style or tolerancing style, and that's also covered when we do some tolerancing. Then you're going to also have some geometric dimensioning and tolerancing. More or less, you can control your tolerancing with a little bit more with just symbols if you don't want to do it with the dimensioning style. So that's where your geometric tolerancing and dimensioning will come into. This will also give you other things that you can put tolerance on, like straightness or perpendicular or something that's symmetrical, or concentric to another object. So you can control all these features with your geometric and dimensioning tolerancing. One of the things you're going to have is you're going to have a geometric datum. And what these do is point out where on your drawing that tolerancing is going to affect. So when you're going to have your tolerancing block, and then you got to tell it what sides or where am I going to affect this at? What dimensions or things of that nature, surfaces, reference points are going to be affected by the tolerancing. Here's an example of what AutoCAD uses to set up those geometric tolerancing. So you can see that you'll have numbers where you can put in those geometric tolerancing. You're going to have which datums are affected by it. You can have multiples. So you can have different things according to AutoCAD and how to set them up. The icon is going to look like the one that's in the top right corner of it. And the shortcut for it, if I'm not mistaken, it's just going to be TOL. And that'll get you to the tolerancing. Leaders. The way we're going to attach things to, maybe it may be words or it may be those datums that we were just looking at, but the way we're going to attach them to it is going to be usually with the leader command. In AutoCAD, there are 3 types that we're going to take a look at. The first one is the leader command. It's one of the oldest ones, and I think when I started using AutoCAD, that was the only one that we had. Then they came out with the quick leader, and that may have been about 10 years ago, and it's been running good, and that one is still a really good one to use. And here recently, in the last 4 to 5 years, they've been using the multi-leaders, which is another one of those really good ways of using. And in my opinion, they're trying to kind of force you along with the multi-leader way, mainly because it has a style to it and they can control some certain functions. But the quick leader and the leader still have some really good features in them. Alright, so anytime I'm dealing with a multi-leader, once again, I'm going to have to set up a style. And it's going to have those 2 options, almost like our dimensioning style or even our text styles, is that we're going to have an annotation and a standard style. Right now, we're going to still dealing with the standard style, and we're going to go through that, and we'll go ahead and discuss, or figure out what we need to change and how it's going to affect our multi-leaders. Okay, one of the last things that we're going to discuss in this lecture is going to be tables. Table is just like an Excel, so it's going to create the same thing that we kind of do in Excel, a spreadsheet type deal. But you can also do a little bit more stuff, I guess AutoCAD related stuff, like you can create a bill of materials. You can export it if you want to, your tables, or you can actually import in your tables. So if you created some in Excel, you can bring that into AutoCAD, and you can also export things out of AutoCAD and open it up in Excel or any other kind of spreadsheet program. But like with most of these things, you're going to have to go ahead and set up another style. And in this one, it's kind of weird that you're only going to get a standard style set up, mainly because it doesn't use the annotation function. But with these, what I tend to do is I'll use if I'm going to use in the model space, I'll wait till I figure out my scale factor. I'll go ahead and create my tablet, and then I'll scale it up by the distance of by the number of my scale factor. With these tables, you remember you're going to have a header row. You're going to have well, the first row is known as your header. Now, these are all optional in AutoCAD, so if you don't want the first row to be a title, the first row is a title. So if you don't want the first row to be a title, you don't have to have it be a title. The second row is going to be known as your header, and once again, that still can be optional. So your second row does not necessarily have to be a header, and then all the rows below it are going to be your data rows. So that's going to be kind of how these tables are going to set up. And when we go and look at the tables in the demos, you can actually see exactly what I'm talking about on these.